Hello everyone, welcome back to Spider-Man Page by Page. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
And today, Dan and I are tackling the Amazing Spider-Man number 8. It's the Tribute to Teenagers issue, Dan.
And quite the tribute it is.
You know, I feel like you could slap that on the front of most of these.
Yeah, this one is really funny because they do try to enhance that theme a little bit, where they have like the fight with Flash in here and then the backup with Johnny Storm and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think maybe it was just kind of a marketing ploy to tell people like, oh, you know, this character is a teenager, because Spider-Man was kind of one of the first characters in comics to be a teenage superhero that wasn't a sidekick and stuff like that. So, I mean, I'm just speculating. I could be wrong about that, but you know, maybe that's what they were going for.
Well, and it definitely feels like an afterthought that's slapped on the cover after the issue's made.
Yeah, maybe.
Because that's nowhere inside it. Like, you'd think it would also be on the splash page, and it's not.
That's true. I mean, the only thing I can possibly think of is, like, maybe the backup was planned later, specifically because it's drawn by Jack Kirby and not Steve Ditko. So maybe Stan was like, you know, we're going to make this a tribute to teenagers. Jack Kirby throws something together real quick. And maybe that's why everyone feels so out of character in that story.
Oh, no, absolutely. That story is definitely Jack Kirby draws Spider-Man and Human Torch going at it, and then Stan writes a bunch of speech bubbles. Like, there were no notes with that. And I know that Stan Lee is notorious for like 1 or 2 sentence blurbs, make a story about this and I'll write all the dialogue later, but that one was like 3 words. Like Spider-Man / Human Torch fight.
I would imagine it was just, like you said, just make a story with Spider-Man and Human Torch in it. That's like, how many pages was that? Was that back up like 5 pages?
It's like 5 or 6, yeah. And then maybe he made the note and then have the rest of the Fantastic Four come in at the end.
Yeah, and have some weird stuff with Spider-Man too. Anyway, we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there when we get there. So let's go ahead and jump right into it, shall we? The Living Brain, the terrible threat of the Living Brain. Look at this splash page, which immediately is what I think of when I think of a teenager tribute issue. The whole tribute to teenager thing I think is hilarious because we're not really celebrating like teenagerdom or like coming of age or anything. It's just a story where our hero and the bully fight, and it's sanctioned by teachers.
Yeah, which is really strange. This issue, if anything, I think could have been potentially interesting. And I was thinking about it when I was reading the issue. This is kind of like a 60s look at you know, the anxiety about artificial intelligence and it being smarter than us and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not really about any of those things. Like, it's a plot element in the story, like Spider-Man's identity is almost revealed because of this super intelligent robot that is smarter than humans and could surpass them intellectually. But it's not thematic. That's not thematic of the story about it at all. So it's
it's just the threat for Spider-Man to fight this issue, and the fight with Flash Thompson, and that don't really have a lot thematically to do with each other.
No, they don't. And I just thought it was kind of cool to see what people in the 60s, or at least Steve Ditko, envisioned what artificial intelligence would look like in the 60s. Obviously, nowadays we have, you know, films like Ex Machina, where we imagine they're going to look just like humans. They're going to be able to like craft real looking skin on themselves and stuff. This thing is like straight out of a 50s sci-fi movie. It's kind of cool. I like the design a lot.
Well, and also importantly, so is the title. And
yes, that's true.
And it makes me wonder how much of this is actually, you know, trying to do real speculative fiction, and how much of it is even kind of parroting that stuff.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. Yeah, it does.
We are straight up doing a sci-fi B movie. I don't know that this isn't intended to be comedic to a degree before it's intended to be thoughtful science fiction.
Well, I was laughing at many points in this issue, so if that was their intent, they succeeded.
Well, and some of that, of course, is, 50-something years after the fact. But I don't know that it wasn't meant to be laughed at the time, too.
Yeah, exactly. Like, specifically the thug dudes that bring the Living Brain into the classroom, they were, like, my favorite thing about the issue. They were hilarious.
But we do that kind of stuff in this book all the time.
That's kind of true, yeah.
So anyway, Dan, how would you like to see Pete Parker fight Flash Thompson?
I would be enthralled.
How would you like to see Spider-Man fight a non-human menace?
Yeah, I can get behind that.
How would you like to see a tale of sheer fantasy so real you'll feel it's happening to you?
Now I'm just afraid.
And that's the part, of course, that makes me go, okay, well, maybe it is intended to be more serious than it reads. But I don't know that Stan Lee is being serious when he says stuff like that.
Yeah, he's a master of hyperbole, so that's probably getting a glimpse of that here.
He's so much about sensationalism. We talked about this before, as much as J. Jonah Jameson is.
Yeah, exactly. Because J. Jonah Jameson was supposed to be like a caricature of what Stanley imagined his employees thought he was.
So it's got to solve. Oh, I also want to mention that the word brain there looks like it's made of donuts with sprinkles.
Oh yeah, it is.
I don't usually point things like that out, but it made me hungry for donuts. So anyway, you'd like it. Okay, you've got it. Start reading. So now it's got us all riled up to read this exciting, captivating story about the living brain.
Can't wait.
Let's get started. So let me ask you a question. I don't know if you'll remember this or not, because you've read all this stuff. Is this really the place where Peter Parker loses his glasses and never puts them on again?
I don't think so. I'm not sure. To be honest with you, now that I think about it.
Because I wondered if that was an intentional development where he's like, well, I don't need these anyway, and then he immediately looks like 15 years older without them.
Yeah, he does.
And he looks like... I was a little surprised by that, where immediately I was like, oh, we're issue 8. Peter Parker looks like 1990s Peter Parker married to Mary Jane.
Yeah, I mean, this could be it. I don't recall if he ever gets into her or anything. That's a good question. We'll have to notice when we go into the Electro issue.
Yeah. I was just wondering if maybe you knew that. So, right away, the living brain thing is amusing because it's supposed to be a computation device, but it conveniently has roller balls that it rolls around on and has arms that swing around for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
Well, that's kind of what they say, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
It's basically just, well, we did it because we can, which, to be fair, if there is some... if there's some commentary here about how we look at technology, it's that, right? We invent because we can, we're not worried about the consequences, and then the thing wreaks havoc because we weren't worried about the consequences.
Right, and Peter Parker kind of has the same perspective as the scientist at the beginning of this, where he's like, oh, Flash, shut up, this is like a marvel of the technological age, and all this stuff. Peter's kind of on it, and then right away, the thing kind of almost undermines his human identity. He's like, this might be terrible.
So they're listening to the guy who, I guess, is this the guy that invented the robot? He's talking about it.
What seems to be just random shady thugs he picked up off the side of the road and was like, help me carry this robot. Because they had no idea what it was before they brought it into this room, apparently.
Yeah, and yet they're referred to in the narration boxes as technicians?
Yeah.
So I don't know what that's about, so apparently they can fix it?
Technicians with no knowledge of machinery.
Yeah, at all. It's weird, like... I did a double take where I was like, wait, where did these thugs come from?
Yeah. They're typical Steve Ditko thugs, too. They just look evil.
Yeah, they look like they should be working for a supervillain, but they don't. They work for this totally innocuous guy who just made a computation device.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, they're just a plot device to make this thing go haywire. And before it goes haywire, there at the bottom of the page, they're starting to concoct their scheme of stealing it to make a fortune. And Peter Parker has decided he's kind of had his last straw with Flash Thompson, and so here in a little bit they're gonna go have a fight. But before that happens, the robot is the inventor asks the kids to come up with something to tell the robot to try to figure out, and they of course say, "Oh, how about the secret identity of Spider-Man?" And some of the things that these kids on this next page come up with for air quote, Dan, facts about Spider-Man are fantastic. How do they know exactly how tall he is and what his weight is?
I don't know. Maybe they're just really good at estimating those kinds of things.
Like it's hilarious. It's like they're doing a crossword puzzle.
I mean, to be fair, like, I know people that can take a look at someone and be like, oh, yeah, they're about, like, I don't know, like 6 feet tall, 180 pounds or something like that.
Yeah, but the way
they can get, like, a raw estimate.
Yeah, but they're not looking at a picture, and so they're just talking about it like it's common knowledge, and it's really funny. Like, everybody just name something you can think of about Spider-Man. It's like, oh, he weighs exactly this much!
Well, they have seen him before at their school, and they have that magazine, which maybe, like, has estimates in it or something. I don't know.
Oh, that's a good point. But then, at the end of the line, we start saying biased opinions that are not facts at all. So we get, he's the most wonderful, heroic, glamorous man in the whole world, and then we get the guy next to her that says, if you ask me, he's a neurotic nut. And then, right after that, Peter Parker and the scientist guy are like, okay, let's feed all that information into the machine. That's kind of my favorite part.
Yeah, and I think
let's feed neurotic nut into the machine.
Yeah, I think the center bottom panel there may be one of my favorite ominous Peter Parker floating head panels of all time because it looks so ominous.
Yeah, it's a really good one. And I like that, like, it's irritating when we get this subtlety in the artwork that tells you so much more than the bazillions of words that are on the page.
Yeah.
And I know that's a criticism we lob at Stan Lee all the time, but I really would love to see a volume of maybe some select issues. I don't think you'd want to do it with all of them, but, like, I'd love to see Marvel release a volume of these that takes all the balloons off.
Where it's just the art?
Yeah. Because it'd be interesting to see just how much you could glean without reading the words. I mean, like, he's constantly explaining everything and having characters explain things, doing thought balloons and stuff, and there's nothing on that panel that say, like, Stan Lee didn't feel the need on that panel to be like, oh, I'm so worried about what my friends will think of me, what my aunt will think of me, what my enemies will do to me. That's just there in the panel. You can see it. Like, we know what he's thinking.
Yeah, and they have done similar kinds of, it's not exactly the same thing, but IDW did do I'm sure you've heard of those artist editions before, and they did one for John Romita's I don't know how many issues they did, but his early run on Spider-Man, and it's kind of just like the pencils uncolored and uninked, and you get to see what the artwork looks like when it's really raw and stuff. I really wanted to buy it, but the volumes are really expensive, so.
I just think that Ditko gets enough done that you'd be able, especially with this particular issue, I don't think you need any of the words at all.
Yeah, that may be the case.
It's not wholly true, but you wouldn't need many of the words. Anyway, so here comes Dan's favorite part. We have a teacher-sanctioned boxing match.
Which is just completely ridiculous.
Now, I will argue with you to a degree and say that I think this is a thing that would be more likely to happen in the 60s in a high school than now.
Oh, of course. Like, they don't even let kids, like, say mean words to each other without, getting, sent to the principal's office nowadays. But, like, a teacher-sanctioned boxing match, I don't know. I doubt that ever happens.
I don't know. It's a thing. I immediately want to ask somebody.
Because I didn't live in the 60s, but it seems like a thing that probably never happened.
Now, as ridiculous as this might seem now, Dan, I feel like I've seen this also in, like, movies from that period.
Yeah, those are movies as well.
Oh, no, I know, but that just makes me wonder if there might be some truth to it. If something like that, like could have happened. Because we were less sensitive. The sensibilities are different. I could totally see like this seems to be the oversimplified thinking of parents sometimes, right? Where like you take the two kids that aren't getting along and let them beat it out of each other, and then they'll be fine.
Yeah. I don't know. I just don't think that like there were definitely like fights in the play, like in the the grounds of school, the playground, whatever the heck they have. Like even still today, that teachers would know about and like don't necessarily intervene, but like giving them boxing gloves and putting them in the gym in a big boxing ring, that just seems kind of over the top to me. Not that it's not cool. I just doubt anything like that ever happened.
Over the top. I mean, the nice thing about it, of course, is it's a controlled environment.
Yeah, and I would imagine they
I'm
did
not saying I would condone that.
Not just for dramatic purposes, but also because it gives an excuse for Spider-Man to be able to hit Flash Thompson, pull his punches, and not like completely destroy him. Like he has a little bit of padding on the gloves and stuff.
Oh yeah, that's definitely why that's there. But that gets weird, right? Because so like if what you're saying is what the book is trying to do, it's like, okay, we put gloves on Peter Parker so that when he hits Flash Thompson, it doesn't like knock him all the way to Dallas. But the problem is he like barely hits him and it almost totally knocks him out.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me wonder how Spider-Man doesn't do this every time he punches supervillains that don't have a specific power that would negate that.
He does talk about pulling his punches a lot, so that's generally what he does.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't punch most villains with his full strength.
Yeah, but for the sake of dramatic effect, we draw it like he does a lot.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But anyway, that was the thing I thought of while I was looking at this page, where I was like, well, no, wait a minute. It seems like he would accidentally kill people all the time. So Flash is trying to come up with excuses for why he's getting his butt handed to him here, and meanwhile, the thugs are trying to steal the living brain, and the living brain goes all haywire, and it starts running amok because somebody was dumb enough to give it rollerball feet and arms that swing around.
See, if I ever got to write a run on Spider-Man, I would totally bring these two guys back. These are the true villains of our story.
I thought you were going to say you'd bring the human brain back.
No, I don't even care about him. Like, these two guys specifically.
I think that could be really funny, though. Like, what would you do with it?
I don't know.
So it's out of control, and everybody's like, oh no! And then Peter Parker and Flash Thompson are still fighting, and he knocks Flash out. And then Spider-Man's about to notice the living brain and have to deal with it. And then it's pretty much just Spider-Man trying to use his wits to take out this machine that is able to think. And of course, it's a real big deal, especially in this period. Oh, a machine that can think. And of course, we think about this differently now, where, well, we do have machines that can think. The difference is whether or not they are sentient beings and have self-awareness, which I don't think this has. I think it just is able to compute what it thinks the next move of its opponent might be, and it can learn and grow. But we have machines now, of course, that do that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the underpinning of the fight is supposed to be like whether or not humans can outwit this, the human wit can outwit the intelligence that the robot has, but it's definitely not the focus of the story at all. It's just kind of like the impetus for this fun action.
I mean, one thing I like about it is Spider-Man is thinking about it maybe differently than other superheroes would, where some of that, at least a tiny bit of the kind of existential questions there he's pondering, and that comes from Peter Parker's scientific knowledge and the way he thinks about things. So
right.
there is a little bit of a personal component where it's not totally generic. I don't feel like you could replace Spider-Man with any hero in this particular issue.
Oh, definitely not. The characterization is solid. I agree.
So I like that about it. But like I said, it's It's just a whole bunch of him jumping around using his agility. I'm kind of just running through these pages right now.
Yeah, a lot of the art's really good. I mean, I love, especially one of the ones that stuck with me was that panel in the center there with Spider-Man breaking the lock on the door and everyone's kind of and stuff. It's really dramatic looking, really nice.
Yeah, a lot of this is cinematic enough, certainly.
Yeah.
Like I said, I just don't think it requires very many of the words, Dan.
Well, he's spinning his arms still.
He's spinning his arms while Spider-Man is spinning his webs.
Yeah.
Oh, look, pedestrians to save.
Mm-hmm. There's a staircase. It's like the staircase fight from Daredevil, but with the living brain and Spider-Man.
Oh, is it like that, Dan?
Yeah.
There's a place where the kind of framework of this show breaks down a little bit. And, okay, so is this a situation where you have to have the technical prowess of Spider-Man to beat this, or would it be kind of obvious how to turn it off?
I mean, Flash Thompson definitely wouldn't know how to, beat that thing.
Well, that's true, which is why no one at the end should believe that he's really Spider-Man.
That's true.
But I think Peter Parker's way out of this at the end is kind of smart.
It is pretty clever. I didn't see it coming, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I didn't either. I like that. So he tells everybody, like Flash Thompson was missing the whole time during that fight. It's funny nobody says that about him.
Yeah, and it looks like he, beat the thugs up and stuff, and it explains why Flash Thompson got creamed by Peter. It makes Peter Parker look like kind of a weakling, but it kind of plays to his advantage in the sense that he doesn't want anybody to ever figure it out. And he is right that no one would ever, remember the fact that he's got, like, the paper that has Spider-Man's identity on it or not.
It's funny that nobody brings up the other time Flash Thompson was in a Spider-Man suit.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because that happened, like, not too long ago. That was the Doom issue.
The Doom issue, yeah. Mm-hmm. We're, I think Stan Lee's pretty consistent with this, where the more he throws himself under the bus like this, the more comfortable he is with it.
Yeah, I agree.
Where this is just kind of a necessity of his life. And, like, he gets irritated still, and understandably, having to deal with a bully and having to, having to, again, pull his punches, hold back, not be able to deal with it. But he, like, even though he's all last straw at the beginning of this, wants to do something about it, he still feels kind of more in control than he did even a couple issues ago.
Yeah, before he was kind of like really unhappy when he'd have to do something like this, but he does end this issue throwing himself under the bus with a smile.
Yeah. And I think it's because he's starting to learn, it doesn't matter what people think of him and what the public perception is of him. As long as he knows he's done the right thing, he can sleep, he can sleep well at night.
Right. I think generally his life is starting to get a little bit better at this point. Like, in the next issue, we'll see his romance with Eddie Brant blossom a little bit more, too.
Yeah.
So it's not even like he's having to throw himself under the bus at the expense of his romantic life or anything. So, yeah.
So that issue was just 16 pages, or not that issue, that story was just 16 pages. This is another one of those that's split into two, but instead of the halfway point like we had with a couple of the early issues, we've just got a little 6-page backup feature, which will take no time to talk about.
Yeah, we're going to tackle Spider-Man Tackles the Torch, because that's right. Literally what happens.
Dan, are you surprised? Because it's a Spider-Man surprise extra.
I'm kind of surprised. It's kind of cool to see. Of course, this isn't the first time this has happened. In I think the Fantastic Four annual where Spider-Man showed up, and there was another story in some other Marvel book. I can't remember what it was that came out before this. That's in my omnibus, where it's a Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, or Spider-Man. Human Torch team up story that Jack Kirby gets to draw Spider-Man and stuff. But it is cool to see Kirby's take on it. Because he does draw, a distinctly different style than Ditko, which is cool.
Well, especially because if memory serves, didn't Stan Lee give it to him in the first place, and he didn't like what he did with it, so he took it to Ditko?
That's right. He took it, and in fact, the cover of Amazing Fantasy 15 is drawn by Jack Kirby. It
Was
is
it
not.
was it based on that Stan Lee was like, yeah, you're not going to draw this book?
No, he took it to him to like draw like initial sketches of the character and stuff because he didn't really know what he looked like and stuff, and he didn't really like what Jack was doing with it. He said that he made Spider-Man look too much like a barrel-chested heroic superhero, and
Yeah.
he wanted Spider-Man to be look like a gawky, awkward teenager that was wet behind the ears because that's who the character was supposed to be, and he thought that Ditko's style fit that a lot more, and I think he's right.
What's interesting, and I don't know if this happens a lot, but now that I'm looking at the credits here, this is Ditko inking Kirby.
Yeah, which is interesting.
And that probably helps to give it more of the general aesthetic you usually have on this book. I wonder how many kids reading this would notice the difference.
Yeah, I'm not sure. For a lot of people, these comics were just kind of like fun things you would buy and then treat them like crap and throw them away when you're done reading them.
Yeah,
so
they're disposable.
Yeah.
So I mean, we know that Stan Lee liked interacting with his audience, and that there was a lot of back and forth, and there were a lot of letters and things. But I'm sure some of that was adults reading. I don't know how many. I just kind of wonder how many kids reading this, and even adults were actually paying attention to the writers and artists and noticing the patterns of what the artwork looked like, looking at different titles that different people would be drawing and noticing that it's the same guy, that kind of thing. Like comic readers tend to do today.
I think at least some people did, because I know that a lot of the Marvel characters were really popular with college kids in the 60s, like Hulk and Doctor Strange specifically. I remember hearing of the youth movement at the time. To a lot of kids, that was kind of the perception of them. So I would imagine if college kids were reading this, they would be smart enough to point at to look and see these are all written and drawn by a lot of the same people.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into this. This is everybody out of character.
Yes, it is. The best thing I can say about this issue, this story here, is that Johnny Storm has excellent taste in sports cars. I love the '69 Corvette. I think it's a '69 Corvette Stingray because they changed what they looked like in the '70s, and this is pretty early. Or maybe I don't know when this issue came out. It could be an earlier '60s model Stingray. But anyway, the '60s Corvette Stingrays are some of my favorite sports cars of all time. And he has a white one here. It's awesome.
This is, of course, a lot of the problem with this issue is that this is after we've seen Spider-Man and the Human Torch develop a real affinity and respect for each other.
That kind of goes on in the other appearances, too. But I like that we continue this kind of ongoing relationship between the two of them, and this goes on throughout the history of both, the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man, like end up, and eventually Peter is kind of brought into. He's considered to be one of the family by the Four, and that's why I loved when Hickman killed off Johnny Storm, that Spider-Man was chosen to be the one to replace him on the team. I was like, if Spider-Man was to join any Marvel team, that's where he belongs. They didn't really do anything with him in that book, but it was a cool idea anyway.
Well, that's my problem with this, is that there's this rivalry here that seems to almost be as intense as the one he has with Flash Thompson, and it comes out of nowhere. Like, I can't decide if it's supposed to be playful or not.
Well, yeah, and like I said, keep in mind, they have had other confrontations before.
Okay.
So
that we
this
just
isn't
haven't
like
reviewed.
the first time they meet or anything. Like, this is Spider-Man showing up and like him in the Torch have like had misunderstandings and fought each other.
Okay, but see, that's what I was going to ask you about, because I know, but we've seen them together in the Amazing book proper, and I didn't remember them having any kind of a rivalry. So this must be built then on something that I haven't read.
It is, yeah. But it's still kind of weird that Peter Parker is like following Johnny Storm around and like showing up at this like
he's crashing a party,
which seems to be just Johnny Storm and or no, there are other dudes there. I thought for a minute they were looking at it was just Johnny Storm and like other girl, like just girls. It was like, man, Johnny Storm's killing it. That's awesome.
Well, and like the impetus for this is Johnny Storm is dating a girl, and Spider-Man wants to show her why she should be dating him.
Yeah, which is hilarious because Johnny Storm obviously doesn't have a secret identity, so the girls are like, oh, like, Johnny Storm, date him. Like, Spider-Man wouldn't reveal his secret identity to these women. It's really strange.
Yeah, like, who, from their perspective, who knows what he looks like under that mask?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely see that he has, like, a developed physique, but, like, he could look like like a goblin in the face. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, but he only has a developed physique because Jack Kirby is drawing him.
But, like, we saw Peter Parker drawn with his shirt off, like, boxing Flash Thompson earlier. Like, he has to be ripped to, like, have that kind of strength,
I know, but he's more ripped because Jack Kirby's drawing him.
That is true.
So they're, it's basically just, oh, you crashed my party, how dare you leave, I want you gone. I just wish this was a little more playful.
This story should be called Spider-Man, It's My Party, and I'll try if I want to. We get some great balls of fire here.
I guess it's nice of the Human Torch to not flame up his webbing while he's trying to float to the ground. That's nice.
It is very nice of him. I love the way that Human Torch used to be drawn with, like, just the red body with all the lines on it and the flames coming off him. But, like, I know it makes more sense for him to just look like a man on fire in the modern comics and stuff, but I always liked that old school kind of, Kirby look. It's cool.
I always thought part of the reason we changed it is just because it looks terrible as an action figure.
Yeah, it probably does. I never had a Human Torch action figure. You're probably right about that.
I had that. I mean, it's funny because you've always just got, like, plastic flames coming off the arms.
Yeah.
But the problem is, the way we draw him now also often looks terrible as an action figure.
That's very true.
I don't know that that's really the reason that they changed it. I mean, you're right. It looks more realistic and, I guess more badass to people. But yeah, I like this too. It's probably just nostalgia.
Yeah, most definitely.
And then the other members of the Force show up, and they're like, oh no, we have to stop the madness. And then Spider-Man's like, no, I'm going to take all of you on.
The panel of them just, like, sitting down, just, like, watching, like, what's going on here is hilarious.
We're not going to come in till we're invited.
Yeah.
And then the moral of the story is if you have a girl that can sweet talk Spider-Man down, use that.
Yes, and I guess Spider-Man is trying to get back at Johnny Storm by being like, I didn't get any of your girls at that party, but your sister likes me, and then sweet talk.
Now that's a really good point you're making. You know what we didn't comment on earlier? The weirdest way I can think of to crash a party is to make a bat out of webbing and fly it around at people.
Yeah, that is really weird.
Because that's what he does. It's a bat! And then they're like, oh wait, that's not a real bat.
He must have, been reading the origin of Batman and been like, alright, we're going to send a bat through the window. And then
see if we can turn some rich kid into Batman at this party.
Yeah.
Isn't this a really strange story?
Yeah, it's really weird.
This whole issue is a little odd, but we're at least, I don't know, doing a little bit of character development and stuff with Peter and Flash, moving that stuff forward. Because the beginning of this, the first part of this issue, that is actually some stuff in this series coming to a head.
Yes, it is. That's right.
And then this is just nonsense.
But it's fun nonsense.
Yeah, no, it definitely is.
We do continue the ongoing thread from this 5-page story with the bat because in the first initial confrontation, Spider-Man throws the bat through the window, and then he literally makes spider bat wings here. So he's got a bat motif going on.
Why doesn't he do that all the time?
I don't know.
Because A, it looks kind of cool, and B, I realize that he doesn't have a bat motif, but it doesn't have to look as much like bat wings. I just mean, it seems like making yourself a web glider would be really helpful in a lot of situations.
After some of these initial issues, that kind of fades away, the ability of Spider-Man to just, make objects out of web and use them. Yeah. We saw the parachutes earlier, and, in the earlier issues, we saw that stuff, too. He doesn't do all that kind of stuff anymore.
Well, and when you use it, it's hard not to have an arbitrary, set of rules for how much webbing he has in a canister and stuff. But whenever he does anything, whenever he makes like for lack of a better word, a construct with his webbing that's that big, we should always make a big deal out of, okay, but you don't have much left to do anything else with.
I think it has a lot to do with the influence of Todd McFarlane on the way that the webbing looks too.
Yeah.
Because in the '60s and before we got McFarlane, a lot of artists would draw it as like an entire spider web like shooting out of his wrist, and he can make like a flat bat wings out of the webbing that comes out of his wrist. But like the way McFarlane around that time in the '80s was drawing it, it was just individual strands that could make an entire web.
Yeah.
And it would just take longer and it would look weird, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and then you have the opposite end of the spectrum, also really early, especially in that first cartoon show, where it's like just a line that comes out. Like a super thin, straight line. And it was always that way in video games.
Yes, it was.
Going back that far. Anyway, anything else you want to mention about this issue?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Well, next time, we're going to be talking about the first appearance of Electro.
Which is exciting. Electro, one of the classic Spider-Man rogues. Some cool stuff.
So, look forward to that. That is issue 9. We'll see you again next week. I'm Captain Logan.
And I am Dan. In character.
Thanks for being here, folks. Bye.
Bye.